This podcast is a Uniting Heart and Soul production and was recorded on land that was stolen nearly 250 years ago. Filthy Hope was conceived and dreamt on Gadigal and Birrabirragal country and is recorded on this country. We acknowledge these peoples as the traditional owners of these lands and extend our respects to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. We at Filthy Hope pay homage to the traditions of storytelling when we share stories on this podcast. Hello and welcome back to Filthy Hope, a podcast from Uniting Heart and Soul in Wallara, where we dive into the grey spaces where Jesus, life and culture intersect. I'm your host, Jonty Cornford, Creative Director at Uniting Heart and Soul, and with me, of course, is the Reverend Vanessa Williams-Henke, Senior Pastor at Uniting Heart and Soul. This week for New Year's Eve, we're rounding out the year of 2022 by looking back at where we've come from. I do have to warn you, while more recently the show hasn't been covering as much upsetting material as we have done in the past, there is mention and discussion of material that listeners may find confronting this week, including mental illness and abortion, so please keep that in mind. Please enjoy the final episode for the year, episode 34 of Filthy Hope. Yes, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Jonty! Woohoo! Nearly, not quite.
Not quite.
Yeah, a few more hours to go.
That's right. I was just thinking like it feels like 2020 still. I don't know if you feel that.
Yeah, I have moments
over the last
like
couple
that.
Of years.
Yeah, I think my default is 2017 for some reason.
Yeah.
I go there. Even 1989, I can go back to that, brother.
Yeah, I'm getting ready to accidentally keep writing 2022 on dates for at least a month.
That's right.
For at least a month.
Yeah.
I have to redo all those forms that inevitably you have to do at the beginning of the year.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's been an interesting year though, hasn't it?
It has. I think in terms of if we're going to group like the quote unquote the COVID years together.
Right.
I feel like 2022 has been one of the better ones overall. I mean, there's still lots of shitty stuff that's going on with that stuff and it hasn't disappeared. But I think overall my experience has been that 2022 was probably better than 2020 and 2021. I don't know how you feel about that, but...
Oh, I totally agree. I mean, we're living in post-COVID pandemic society now, aren't we? We're watching... I'm just even noticing it from a return to work thing. I mean, we've been back at work for a long time, but from the traffic on the road, and we often talk about it when we do what grinds our gears.
Yeah.
I'm noticing between Tuesday and Wednesday, Thursday are those busiest days on the road. So the world's coming back. There's more people around. The world is returning.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's all starting to... earlier in the year, in fact, just throughout the year, been to a bunch of concerts, which I had almost... I think I've talked about this before, but like I've been to a couple of really, really great concerts that have been like full and packed, and you're standing there in the general admission area.
You love it, don't you?
Suddenly, but it's this. I remember the first one. It was really, really weird. Like the first major one. I went to two earlier in the year that were like both at Kudos Bank Arena, which is quite a big venue. I went and saw the Wiggles, which was the original 4 Wiggles as well. So Greg climbed out of his coffin and.
Amazing.
Did the tour. Jeff was there as well, which was awesome. But then also Gang of Youths, which was like an unbelievable show. Both packed, sold out Kudos Bank Arena shows. And I hadn't quite realised how weird it would be to be in a crowd that big again, having been conditioned for a couple of years that was bad and you were going to get sick and
correct.
Just steer clear of other people.
I've been at the Capitol Theatre a few times this year to see some shows. and I recently saw Moulin Rouge. And the seats are really tight. You can't really have a huge bum and sit in those seats because you kind of ooze out underneath it if you've got a big bum. And then your bum hits somebody else's bum. It's a creepy, weirdo feeling. But I've also seen Phantom of the Opera recently.
Yep.
But those tickets were purchased way back in before COVID.
Right.
And I've waited 2 years to go and see that.
It's been postponed, or is that the original
Postponed.
date? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it completely got postponed, and then to go and see it was fantastic. But that whole idea, I fully get you, Jonty, that idea of being in close proximity with complete strangers with no mask on was a bit disconcerting the first couple of times.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was weird.
We've talked before about mask wearing and mask etiquette, and I was actually having a conversation last night with some friends who are spending more and more time on the train now that, COVID's lifting and people are going back to work a lot more, and just the people that sit in a tin can with recycled air with everyone else with their masks hanging under their nose.
Yeah.
It's just like, or taking their mask off to sneeze.
Yeah.
You'd think, almost 3 years into a pandemic, people would have got the hang of what the point of the mask is. But,
exactly.
I guess we've got to move forward at the pace of our slowest members as society. That's the way it works. We mentioned a couple of shows. I reckon to celebrate the year that was 2022, we should talk about some of the favourite things that we did in 2022. So Phantom of the Opera you went to. Were there any other great shows that you went to?
Yeah, there was. I went and saw I'll Be There, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. You know who that is?
That's gone straight over my head.
Oh, Human Nature.
Oh
my gosh, it was just so unreal. And I thought it was going to be a really cool concert with lots of young people, but they were all desperate old ladies like myself.
I could have told you that was going to be the case.
Oh, it was tragic, but it was so much fun. It was just like
I'd love to see that show. That'd be
they
awesome.
were so slick, Jonty.
Yeah.
And the music's just awesome. And it's not even music from my era. I mean, it's from probably mum and dad's era. And I love it.
But it's just timeless, isn't it?
I like Motown. Yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah. That music is timeless, I think.
Yeah.
It has that. It's similar to I feel like, the Beatles is the classic one that it doesn't really matter if you're from the era that music was released in. It's just this universal thing that it has this broad appeal. And I think similar thing.
It's
I'd
amazing.
love to go to that show.
Oh, yeah, it was really, really great. The other showstopper was, and I know Rachel in our team loves this show and she actually put me onto it, is the musical Six about Henry VIII and his 6 wives.
Yes, I've heard of this.
And it was just, I've seen it twice now because it's that good. It's like a 90-minute rock concert and it has a really wide demographic appeal from really young people to really mature people, older people. And it was just electrifying and I fully enjoyed that. So I haven't been to concerts like you do concerts, like live music, but I've seen my fair share of musical theatre, which I totally love. It's my jam.
Yeah.
And it's been really nice being back in that space again. It's
awesome.
been terrific. Yeah.
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 Yeah, I think.
What about you?
The last musical I went to wasn't actually in 2022. It was 2021. I went to American Psycho, which I think I've spoken about.
Oh, you have?
Before
Yeah.
on the show. Which for people that have seen the movie, most likely with Christian Bale, but perhaps less likely read the book, it's a very darkly comic, sort of black humour, black comedy with weirdly sharp, satirical elements, but it's also very, very graphic in its depiction of a character who's a serial killer, basically. But the way that the show was presented, I was so, and I'm not a musical theatre guy necessarily, and I remember just watching going, this is amazing, I should get into musical theatre, because it was a rotating circular set with, is it radius or which way, the whole way across the circle or halfway through? Whatever. There's like a T-shaped wall, one which goes across the middle of the circle, and then the other one goes from the middle out to the end. So there's like 2/4 of a set and then a half set behind it.
Yeah.
With doors in between. But it's all mirrored.
Yes, wow.
And so there are scenes with people walking between rooms where the set's rotating.
Wow.
And behind the set where you can't see, that's where people are obviously changing or switching characters or whatever. And the music, for people that know the movie, this won't be a surprise to you, but the music is all 80s pop. So there's lots of Huey Lewis and the News and all that music. Amazing music. And then, buckets of blood spraying around as well in different scenes. It was awesome. And like the ending, without giving too many spoilers, there's surprise, in a serial killer story, people get killed. And before the intermission, these plastic sheets or like a curtain comes down in front of the characters, one of which is about to kill the other with an axe. And you see the silhouette of the axe come down and blood sprays onto the back of the curtain. Oh. And it's so well done. And then the lights go out and we go to intermission.
Oh, that almost sounds as dramatic as when, spoiler alert people, in Phantom of the Opera, when the chandelier, play the music now, Jonty, dun, 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 needs to be on an organ. The chandelier comes crashing from the ceiling down and the screams from the thousands of people in the audience. It's just like, it's the best.
Yeah.
It's just the best.
I recently watched the 2 different movie adaptations of Phantom, like the original one from 20-something. I don't remember, 1920. I want to say 27, maybe. I could be wrong. But then there's also a big Technicolor widescreen one from 1940-something, and they're both fantastic. But like the makeup in the original one is so creepy. Oh, yes. I love it. It's so good.
It's a creepy show, man.
It is. It's awesome.
It's a really creepy show.
And that's Andrew Lloyd Webber, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's him. I think he wrote that about himself.
I think
he is the Phantom.
Some would argue that every piece of fiction, the author's in there somewhere.
Oh, I'm sure it's him, definitely. I've been to the Opera House in Paris, and I was so excited when I went to the Opera House in Paris. I'd seen Phantom when I was a younger woman, and then I've seen it again now. And in between those 2 times, I've been to the Paris Opera House, and that's where it's depicted. And it was just fantastic to imagine how that was, because it just made it even more exciting for me to be a part of. I loved it.
Yeah.
Special.
Now, you didn't want to talk about this, but I'm going to ask you anyway.
Oh, no.
Real quick, are there any favourite books that you read this year?
I have read so many, I want to say, academic papers. Can I go there? Does that...
Yeah.
And I've read sections of books. I have got an entire box that's about that deep, full of photocopied articles of content from theologians that I have read over the last 6 months to help me understand what I've been studying in my master's. So I have not read an entire book, Jonty, but I've been reading apps. It makes me sweat just thinking about it because I'm having post-traumatic stress. That's where my brain has been in the last 6 months, is absorbing this material. And my daughters say there's this funny thing. When I was going back to academia, because I've been sermon writing now for a bunch of years, and to switch out of sermon writing narrative kind of form, which is all research-based information, but you've got to put it into a language that people are going to want to understand and hear, that's fun and vibrant and happy and engaging. And these theologians generally don't write like that. So I've had to take the words that they write and actually turn that into something interesting. And you know how you open tabs up on your laptop, and that's probably how young people do uni these days. Well, when I was doing my undergrad, I didn't know about that then. And so what I would do is I'd photocopy the material or print material and then lay it all out, read it, highlight it with a highlighter pen, have Post-it notes and scribble all over it, and then synthesize the material in my brain and then write it into my document, right? Anyway, I was sitting up, we've got this massive marble bench in our kitchen, and I laid out 40 bits of documentation, different readings that I'd read. And I thought I was being really cool, and I took this photo just because the kids were saying, "Hey, Mum, how's your day?" going, and I took a photo of me kind of going like with all the stuff laid out on the marble bench, and I said, "This is my day." And Aurora said to me, "Mum, what are you doing?" Well, she texted back, "What is that?" And I said, "Babe, I'm writing an essay. Don't you do it like this? Don't you do this down in your office?" She said, "Well, I suppose, Mum, it's like having tabs open, but old school." So I've been doing old school, and I've been trying to speak to all my friends about how they do it, and some do it old school, some do it with their tabs open. I get lost.
I feel really strongly that physically interacting with material really, really helps with retaining information.
Oh, thank you, Jonty.
I'm the same. Like, and I think
oh my God, and you're young.
Aurora,
did you hear that?
But I think that's partly because I'm a book reader.
Yes.
And so a big part of
flipping
reading
the pages,
is
right?
I read books. And my eyes glaze over a bit when I look at a screen and I'm trying to take in a reading, for example. Like when I was at uni, I would print everything off.
Oh, that is like music to my ears, Jonty, because my kids, I felt shamed, absolutely shamed.
Come on, Slink.
Yeah, come on. What is the thing? I know, she's just so bloody modern.
I'm trying to think. So
what's your favourite book?
Well, so this is hard for me because I haven't read as many books as I usually do in a year, but I still read enough that it's hard for me to like sift through what the favourites are. For context, in 2018, I think. Yes, 2018, my second year of undergrad, I set myself the challenge to read 100 books in the year because I heard, I think, a few different people, Stephen King, there was a few quotes from another handful of writers who were saying if you want to be a novelist, you have to read all the time. It's the same reason I watch heaps and heaps and heaps of movies. It's just about immersing yourself in the art form. So I set myself the challenge, and 4 days a week I had, a minimum 2 hours on the train going to and from uni, so I would just read. And I read 101 books in 2018. This year I think I'm up to... I think I might just reach my goal of 50 if I don't go partying tonight and go and finish one of my books.
Oh, that is a lot of reading, Jonty.
But I think
do you do it fast? Do you fast? Do you take it all in, or are you speeding?
Yeah, I mean, it depends. Like if I'm reading a book and I'm not super into it,
yeah.
If I haven't tipped all the way over into like I hate this book, I'm not going to finish it, and I toss it aside. If I haven't quite reached there, but I'm still not loving it, I will just start to skim through it a little bit more. But, I mean, in terms of favourites, I reread, so this isn't a favourite first read, but I have a favourite novel that I haven't spoken about on this podcast called House of Leaves, which is a massive tome of a book, but it's thick, but it's also like, it's not quite A3 size, but it's big. And the best way I can describe it is that it is 4 different narratives going on at once, all in different fonts. So it's presented as, okay, here are the layers. There is a home video that a family made when they moved into a house where they suddenly realised that the measurements on the inside were bigger than the outside. And then they find a door. Then there's a corridor, and the corridor and so there's a creepy haunted house thing going on there, right?
That's a head wreck.
Then there is a document, a paper that has been written about this home movie that we read by this guy called Zampano. And it's like an academic piece of literature analysing this film and its cultural relevance and it references real people in the real world in this thing. That's in a different font. Then there is a guy whose name is Johnny Truant has found this paper written by this guy Zampano in his apartment. He's moved into his apartment after this guy has died and found this document. And so he's right. It's his life story based around but where it intersects with him finding this document.
Like a movie.
And then there's an even more meta layer, which I won't spoil for people that want to read it, where it recontextualizes the whole book. But what it does is, because there's all these different fonts and different styles of writing, different voicings, and there's different colours. As well as that, it actually forces you to move the book around, upside down and to the side, and there are some pages that have 3 words on it. There are some pages that have words going in all different directions.
Wow.
There are some bits where the writing is mirrored, and you're like, what the heck? But then what you realise is you get to a certain point and that section on the page that is mirrored, you have to go back and read in reverse. And there's all elements of the story that you have to, but what it is doing is mimicking the way that the house is opening up and closing spatially.
I need to kind of read that. That so engaged me.
It's such an awesome book.
Yeah.
And it's really scary and really frightening, but it's also hilarious. And it's also like this beautiful romance novel.
Wow.
But it'll take you like a month to read, and you have to sit down and physically interact with this book and turn it upside down and do all these things.
It moves me a lot.
It's awesome.
Yeah,
and it's a big investment, but I try and reread it at least once a year for the last few years.
It's an investment in time?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It usually takes me, because I'll read it at the same time as other books because it takes a long time.
You are such a geek.
You're telling me. Yeah, but I think the first time I read it without reading anything else, it took like a month. So over the course of the year, I'll try and read all of it.
I tell you what I did read a lot of. Can I borrow that?
Absolutely. I'll lend it to you.
Interesting. I tell you what I did read a lot of. During Her Majesty's death, I read a lot of The New Idea.
Oh, yeah.
And Woman's Weekly and all those lovely magas that had all the beautiful pictures of her, and I just loved that. And a lady at church lent me some little Judy, shout out to gorgeous Judy. She gave me her little magas, and I
think we'll be listening. I taught her how to find it on YouTube.
Wow. Hello, Jude. And yeah, amazing. I read a lot about that. There wasn't anything I didn't know about Meghan, Harry and the Windsors. I became quite an expert during the period, quite obsessed actually.
Did you see, there's another book I want to talk about, but that reminds me that one of my favourite films that I saw this year was Spencer with Kristen Stewart.
Oh, I loved that.
Do you like it?
Yes, I loved it a lot.
Wonderful.
She was extraordinary.
She's
as
so
an
good.
actor.
Yeah.
She just tricked me into thinking it really was Diana.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was exceptional, hey?
Yeah, and I think it's interesting. So my partner didn't like it.
Oh.
But I think that there's part of the reason why I think people don't like it is it's not a great overall story.
Just a slice of time.
It's Christmas.
Sandringham, right?
Yeah.
Or was it Balmoral? I can't remember where it's set. One of the palaces.
I think that rings a bell. Balmoral.
Balmoral.
But it's a movie about an eating disorder. It's not this big broad story of the royals.
No.
It's this very, very intimate 24-hour period of time.
Yep. I loved it.
I think it's beautiful. And there's it's directed by the guy that made Jackie about
loved that one too.
With Natalie Portman.
Yeah.
Very similar.
Loved that as well. Yeah.
And it's a really, really interesting comparison to another movie that came out this year called Blonde, which is the Marilyn Monroe film.
I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah.
Because what did you think of that?
Well, I like it. I don't love it. I quite like it. But I think the film doesn't do itself any favours by marketing itself as a Marilyn Monroe biopic.
I had to stop watching it, Jonty. It gave me the shits. I had to literally stop. So I probably got 30 minutes into it and I went, I can't do this anymore.
Was it because you felt like it wasn't doing the story justice?
Yeah, I felt like it wasn't necessarily the truth.
Yeah. So, and this is why I luckily heard a review from someone that I respect a lot beforehand who said, don't go into it expecting a true depiction of the life of Marilyn Monroe because it's based on a novel.
See, now I can re-engage.
Yeah. And what he described it actually as a horror film about the difference between who Norma Jean was in real life and who Marilyn Monroe was and the over-sexualized image of who she was in the public sphere.
Wow.
And it's a film about how she tries to separate herself from trauma in her childhood by trying to hide her identity in this Marilyn Monroe figure.
Yep.
But it just keeps catching up with her.
Yeah,
and almost by forcing herself to disassociate from her real identity as Norma Jean, she's then actually just fast-tracking that process of trauma re-emerging. So it's not really a movie about Norma Jean, the person.
Wow.
It's a movie about Marilyn Monroe and what that means as an idea and how
complex trauma.
Yeah. So I would say for people that are either haven't seen it or were put off by it, it's also 3 hours long. Like, it's not an easy movie to watch.
It was not easy.
And
I was
it's very
disturbed.
full on. There's some
good.
pretty graphic.
Yeah.
Like, there's some sexual assault stuff in there, which is really.
I didn't even get to that bit.
It's pretty graphic and it's also it's very, very. You know, some would say that for a movie to work on its audience, it has to trick the audience into forgetting that they're watching a movie.
Yeah,
this is a movie that, like, absolutely is reminding the audience that it's a movie the whole time, because it changes from black and white to color to different aspect ratios to the lenses change all the time, and it's this really flashy show of form as opposed to the content.
Jonty. So I think I'll watch that in the daytime.
Yeah,
with a cup of tea and a biscuit
in a couple of sittings. I actually watched. I put it on. And then, without realising how long it was, and I was starting to get a bit drowsy, so I paused it to see how long to go it was, and I was like halfway. So I was like, I'll finish it tomorrow.
Yeah, okay, so that's great.
I'd do it in 2 sittings, I would say. It's an interesting comparison to Spencer, though, I think, because they're both films about famous blonde women who were...
Died in the prime of their life,
but very publicly not... the person that they were in real life, I think. Yeah. So it's a really interesting comparison piece to compare those two.
Yeah, thank you for that. Could be some next week's viewing over the new year.
Yeah. If
That's amazing. Got some time?
Some lazy days to while away.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And then, because I'll kick myself if I don't, but you then got to go and watch Twin Peaks Fire Walk with me, because it's the same thing.
Okay. Can we watch that together?
Sure.
So you can explain it to me.
Yeah, that's if I won't go on for too long, but like that's also a story, and Blonde is very similar.
Oh, interesting.
To the Twin Peaks film, because it's about a woman wrestling with real intense trauma.
That sounds like fun for me to watch. Thanks, Jonty.
I
wrestle with my own trauma.
You're welcome. To line it up a bit, there was another book that I read this year that came out. It actually came out this year. There's a comedian that I love called Daniel Sloss. Have you heard of this dude?
No.
He's a Scottish guy. I think he's about my age. And he has a Netflix special that I actually think we should devote an episode to next year.
Okay.
About relationships and love and marriage. And, he boasts that he has broken up more marriages than any other comedian. But actually, and that's a provocative statement, but the heart of what he's talking about is actually really, really valuable, I think. And it's this over-fetishization that we have with relationships. And that if you're not in the right relationship, you're not with someone that is right for you, we're more likely just to stick it out. And then in 10 years' time, we turn around and go, I want out. But we're stuck in these... it's pretty grim. But he says, better to just get out and be happy alone than be miserable with someone that doesn't like you.
How interesting.
So he released a book as well called Everyone You Hate Is Going to Die.
Oh.
And fun fact, I was reading the book on the plane, I think it was on the plane, on a flight to Melbourne, the day that Queen Elizabeth passed away. And there's a passage in the first chapter where he's talking about all the people that he will not give a shit about when they die. And he's Scottish. So there's chapters and chapters about his relationship with Britain.
Yeah.
And he says, I can't wait till the day that Queen Elizabeth dies. And I'm reading it on the day that she passed away. It was very surreal. Which is almost like the prime contextual time to read that book.
100%.
Because he's flippantly saying these outrageous things about liking the idea of different people dying. But the point of it is actually about, like, everyone dies. And it's really important for us to understand and be at peace with that, because everyone dies. The people we love are going to die. The people we hate are going to die.
I know. I think the title of that book's quite comforting, actually.
It's good, isn't it?
Yeah. I went, oh, that's right.
Yeah.
I don't need to worry about that. Oh, that's right.
But it's also so funny. So funny.
So dark, isn't it?
It's such a funny book, and he's a great comedian. I actually really recommend his special on Netflix called Jigsaw. The metaphor being that your life is a jigsaw and you have to build your own jigsaw, and you can't force someone else's jigsaw into your own jigsaw.
Love that.
And I think something that has actually stayed with me a lot, and shout out to my partner, we watched this comedy special together, I think a month into our relationship. It since we'd started dating, and she thought that it'd be a good idea. And about 10 minutes in, we were like, ooh, this is a spicy choice. But because it basically said, he says a lot of things that are meant to be provocative, but just saying that like all relationships are a scam. But his main thrust, which I genuinely love, is that you need to not be in a relationship until you know how to love yourself fully.
100%.
Because if you only love yourself 40% of the capacity that you can love yourself, someone can come along and love you 60%, which isn't that great. But it's 20% more than you love yourself, so you're just head over heels and you fall for this person. Whereas if you love yourself 100%, you're not going to take anything less than 100% from the other person.
Oh, I love that.
And that kind of places this not unrealistic bar. I think we have lowered the expectations of what we deserve in a relationship as a culture, that until you love yourself 100%, you need to not be in a relationship, because anyone can come along and tell you that they love you
and exploit that.
When realistically, they don't love you for who you are. They love you for the 40% of who you are.
So let's unpack that next year in a pod, and let's bring in my friend Kim, who's a relationships counsellor.
Let's do it.
And I think that could absolutely be an exceptional
100%.
listening and viewing.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah.
So homework, go and check out Daniel Sloss on Netflix.
Stick it in the show notes.
I'll stick it in the show notes.
Yeah, incredible. Thank you for that, Jonty. So we're coming into a new season, and what time do you pack up your Christmas tree and stuff? I'm going to get rid of that now, because it's nearly time to pack up the whole Christmas palaver.
Yeah, it depends, because sometimes we go away.
Right.
And so Mum and Dad for the longest time have through guides and scouts, they get a real Christmas tree. And often if we go away, we'll sometimes go away to Thredbo in the summer.
Yeah, you see.
We will go away elsewhere, like January, you go away and do stuff. By the time we come back, the Christmas tree has started.
Yeah, it's got dust.
Well, and the pine tree has just started dropping pines all over the carpet, and it starts smelling. Which during December, there is nothing better than walking into that room and smelling the Christmas tree. Like, it's wonderful. But if you don't pack it up in time,
not cool.
It starts getting rough. But I think I've forgotten what day it is. I feel like it's like the 6th of January is because it's like the 12 days of Christmas. There's that traditional, you leave it up for, I think it's 12 days, and then you pack it down. I feel like it's the 5th or the 6th.
Oh, can I tell you?
We'll have got that wrong.
In our home, I like to set up around Halloween.
Oh my goodness.
I've got this Halloween setup thing. I love to set that up then. And then by the time I actually get to Christmas, Christmas Day, I am so done with the reindeers and the Santas and all the kitsch David Jones crap that my house is full of. It's like Junker Us on steroids at my place. And I just can't wait. It gets to Christmas night and I'm already hassling Rob to get the boxes from the garage. But I've left it up this year. I've left it up a bit longer.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I love Halloween just because, I mean, I watch horror movies all the time anyway, but it's an excuse to watch horror movies with your friends. So because of that, but also because I just get tired of all the Christmas stuff everywhere, I feel really strongly that like it's got to be December.
When you unpack it.
No, yeah, by the time, like if you're putting up Christmas decorations,
pack it up, yeah.
If you're putting them up, it's got to be at least the 1st of December in my brain.
Oh,
it's too long.
No, Jonty, you're right. I think that's the law. That it should only go. But
not in shopping. There's already
shopping centres in October. They've got it.
It's
up,
ridiculous.
Mate.
Yeah.
You know, it's been going on for months now.
Yeah. It's just like a sixth of the year. Like,
I know.
At that point, it's just ridiculous.
I know. I do love it though. I love a good Christmas decky, brother.
I think I mentioned this last week in our Christmas episode, but my family over at Mum and Dad's, we have this tradition of everyone has to be there, present.
Yeah.
It's usually a Saturday in the lead up to Christmas, early in December. There are 2 specific records that we have to put on, CDs we have to put on, and we bring out the box and we cover the Christmas tree. So yeah, I do love that process of putting up Christmas.
It's
and
fun.
I think going out and looking at Christmas lights as well.
There's so much hope, isn't there? It's just fun, and I think it hooks us back into happy memories, happy previous memories.
Totally.
And I'm sure there's people out there that don't have happy Christmas memories, and the season of Christmas and New Year is not a happy time for people. But and I hope maybe this year there's a shift, in the season for people that are listening that if it has been an unhappy time, my prayer is that you can start some new traditions and new things can be planted, and this can be the start of something really special and new for you.
Mm. And just because it's the new year, that doesn't mean it's the only opportunity for that to change for you.
No, that's exactly right.
I think there's this over importance that we place on New Year's resolutions and things like that. And if people, for whatever situation they're in, life isn't going well for them, we New Year's isn't the only opportunity that we have to change that. You can change your life situation whenever you want. Whenever is the right time for that to happen. It doesn't have to be on New Year's. So
we had a New Year's thing happen last year. I've been married to Rob for 33 years, coming up for 34 years, and every New Year's Eve we have a party or we go to a party or we're overseas and we're doing something really great on New Year's Eve. But it gets to about 11 o'clock and Rob goes into this spiral, and it's not because of too much tequila. He just goes into he goes from the life of the party into like an emotional, depressive spiral before 12 o'clock comes up. And last year I said, and we often would get into a bit of a conversation about it because he just he just stops having fun all of a sudden. And then after 30-something years, I finally said, what is going on, mate? What is this thing that goes on New Year's Eve? This isn't just a random thing. This is a pattern of behaviour. It took me that long to work it out, Jonty. And we stopped and we talked about it, and he said and cried, and we talked about this, that New Year's Eve for him as a little boy was actually a deeply sad time. And he explained to me New Year's Eve, because he was raised by his grandparents, 2 different homes in the same village in Kentucky, and he would spend the New Year's Eve with the Henkeys. And Grandma Henke was now a widow from when Rob was about 12. So New Year's Eve in the Henke home was always really depressive and sad. Grandma would be on a downer, she would be sad, and they would talk about the grandpa who died, and Rob had this real sense of sorrow in the home. Grandma had listened to Bing Crosby and music from her era with him to bring back her memories. But Rob's a little boy and he's picking up on the New Year's Eve nuance.
Yeah.
And this is what he learnt. At 11 p.m. at night, you go into this deep sorrow and deep sadness. So we worked this out. And I said to him, I did a bit of, therapy, and I said to him, hey, babe, Grandpa's in heaven. We don't have to feel that sorrow now. He's with God. It's all good. And you actually are free to actually celebrate right past midnight. You can keep going to 2 a.m, brother. It's all going to be okay. You don't need to feel that sorrow. And it was so interesting because last New Year's Eve was the very first New Year's Eve that Rob didn't go into one of those deep spirals.
There you go.
New season for us as a family.
That's so interesting because there's a real thing that, and without sharing details, so I'm sure this won't be an issue, but both my partner and I have various different mental health things going on in our lives that require ongoing maintenance.
Love that.
But there is a very real element to that, that particular times of the year. That those feelings will recur. And we've talked about
I've got Easter trauma.
Easter for you.
It's
a
horrible.
similar thing. Yeah. And it doesn't even have to be like a particular public holiday or notable. It can even just be like a change of the season. So once it starts getting cold again and rainy in winter, that can, and not even every year. It can be a 2 or 3 year cycle, which is really, really fascinating to me. And I'm no psychologist, so don't quote me on any of these things. It's just from experience, it's really interesting and valuable to learn those nuances of the human experience and take that on in how you live your life and how you treat other people and how you be empathetic to other people.
Yeah, and how your feelings about those seasonal shifts is valid.
Yes.
And I think what's important, though, is to understand what those triggers are and why they actually come about, and why is our mental health affected by that stuff. It's so critical because it can be so freeing when you actually know why, that's gold.
Yeah, it's almost like getting a diagnosis, so you know how to treat it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you know what to do with it.
Yeah.
And certainly when grief anniversaries come around, I have this couple of good grief anniversaries every year, and I have a grief anniversary of when I fell pregnant that led into my abortion. I know when they were. I know the dates, and I can go into like a bit of a spiral. And so I now know, and it took me many years and lots of therapy, but what I do is I actually do some really good self-care around those dates. I know they're coming. I prep for them, so I don't have to have a week or a couple of weeks of spinning out of control and feeling sad and depressed. I actually do the reverse, and I care for myself and I nurture myself and I pray, and I'll seek help if I need it. But I've got to a point now where I can actually turn those feelings around and put them into a spot. Not everybody can do that. I'm not giving out advice. I'm just talking about what I do, my strategies for those times that come about. It's like Christmas and New Year's Eve and Easter or any big events, right? Seasonal.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So, Jonty, I was thinking about, because we're Christians and we're a part of a Jesus club, I was thinking about seasons, and we've kind of been talking about that, haven't we?
Yeah.
The different seasons of the year and things that we've loved, and we never really talked about things we didn't like this year. Should we cover those?
I mean, we've covered a lot of it in Vent Central.
Yeah, we have.
See previous episodes.
Yeah, okay, that's great.
I mean, if there's anything major that you want to cover, we hadn't talked about this off mic.
Oh, just probably not applicable to put it out on
no, that's
pod,
fair.
actually. So, there are things that I've been upset about this year, definitely, and
that's fair.
Pissed off about, but probably not the forum to be chatting about.
Yeah, no.
So it's not like life has been joy the whole time, right?
Same.
It's important to say.
And that like something for me that I think I was downplaying how much it actually was a genuine point of like discomfort and annoyance and loss for me was the amount of time that it's been raining.
Oh.
And I think there are so many weeks that I wasn't able to play weekend sport because it was raining.
Huge impact.
Which impacts my mental health because I don't get to go out and play with my team. It impacts my physical health because I'm stuck inside and I can't, which then impacts, for people that don't know, I'm very injury prone and I have had back issues since I was a teenager. And when it's this chicken and the egg thing, when you're not exercising and doing your usual fitness stuff, that affects my back.
Yeah. Which
then, because my back hurts, that stops me from going and doing physical activity. And it's this thing. And the rain has been awful for that. And I've been in a couple of cycles at different points during this year and last year where physical activity and exercise and physical health and therefore mental health have been this thing that has been not a huge issue for me, but something that I've needed to stay on top of.
And particularly when you're not exercise, and exercise occurs outside. So for gym people, it's no problem. Rain, hail, or shine, hot, cold days, doesn't matter. It's all air conditioned and you're fine.
Yeah.
But for somebody like you that relies on outside activity to get that fix physically, mentally, it's had a huge impact.
Yeah. And not just me,
so many
everyone.
Sports people.
Anyone that plays cricket or hockey or football or rugby,
Yeah. I like to walk, and so it's impacted my walking.
Yeah.
You know, I love to walk at the end of the day, and often I'll get home and it's pissing down. Can't go. It's like far out, man.
Yeah. But I was thinking, a friend of mine, Jack, who has been on this podcast earlier, he was saying on that episode that he has started Muay Thai.
Oh.
And that's a thing that he had always... and James Aaron even was talking about Muay Thai as well. And that's something that I've actually been thinking about for a long time. And maybe this is by saying it on the podcast.
Putting it out there.
I've been putting it out there. Maybe by the time we get back next year,
could be a new season.
Some martial arts training, because I think that's, for me, would be ideal because it's with other people, but it's also like core strength and
learning a skill
and lower body is really important for me and my back.
Totally.
And that might actually be plus learning a new skill. You're absolutely right.
Wow. I love that.
I think as someone that like the discipline of writing and the discipline of playing an instrument, I think the discipline of learning a new skill like martial arts would actually be really great.
And learning choreography trains your brain a little bit like learning music, I think. It comes from, shivers, I hope I've got that right, but I think it comes from a similar place. It's memory and physical recall of movement patterns, and it's so good for our brains.
Oh, muscle memory with music is huge.
Unreal.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm excited to see how that goes for you.
Yeah, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, good on you.
Yeah, because that rain won't have an effect on that either.
No, indoors.
Yeah.
So Ecclesiastes 3, 1-22, talking about seasons. So this sounds like it could be a new season for you.
Yeah.
In 2023, Jonty. It says, for everything there is a season and a time for every matter under heaven, a time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, a time to pluck up what is planted, a time to kill, a time to heal, a time to break down, a time to build up, a time to weep, a time to laugh, a time to mourn, a time to dance, a time for Mai Tai, a time to cast away stones and a time to gather stones together, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing. So the world is full of seasons, and we do seasons through our spring and summer and winter and autumn. So life is full of seasons. So while we're wrapping up today, 2022, I wonder what this new season holds for our listeners going into the fresh new year. What is out there for them? Is it going to be a season? Is it going to be a dry season? Is it going to be a season for waiting for something new? Could it be a pruning season? Do you need something to leave something behind? Is it going to be a grinding season? Is it going to be a season where we're tested and there's trials? It seems like at every turn. You know, there's years that can seem like that, can't there? Is it going to be a spiritual warfare season, or is it going to be a happy season, which is all going to be happy and there's going to be a period of great peace and joy in our lives? I wonder what sort of season our next year is going to bring.
Yeah. And even for this podcast, we are in the process of thinking and praying and discerning what's next for us.
It's so exciting.
Which and I think I didn't mention earlier, but like the inclusion of this podcast this year has been a big change for both of us. Massive change.
Brand new staff.
Yeah. And I think, credit to our listeners as well for that's why we record these episodes, not for us. I don't listen back to them after I've spent the hours editing it. So I'd be really curious and pleased to know if our conversations have had a part in any listeners' changing of seasons, whether something that you've shared or I've shared or any of our guests have shared have played a part in any of that in our listeners' lives.
Or if it's given anybody comfort.
Yeah.
A sense of sameness and normalisation. By sharing the ups and downs of what we've shared over this year, has anybody related to the stories and felt a sense of maybe shared experience through some of our stuff?
So I wonder...
I hope so.
Yeah. Are there any episodes or conversations that stick out to you as being really great over this last year? Because we've been going for 8 months, I think. Roughly April, I think we started. That's a lot of conversations.
It's a lot. I think my favourite conversations are when I'm not having to share a story and I'm actually a part of hearing somebody else's story and I can interact and engage in their story, because I actually find my sharing of stories is actually, I find I get quite stressed about that. I do.
Yes.
And it comes at a bit of a cost to share so deeply and intimately the stories, but yet I've felt really drawn to want to do that, to help people with shared stories. I loved the one with Alison, the episode with her. I thought that was on purity culture.
Yeah, that was really interesting.
That was an interesting one. I loved the one on James Aaron.
Yeah, James is a legend.
Yeah, I loved that one.
He's awesome.
Michael Jensen. It was a totally another level.
Yeah, I'd love to, if that's like an area that we want to pursue more of, is like more of that style of conversation. I think one that I loved, which a lot of people may have it might have slipped by for them, but there was a little short episode we did towards the beginning where you shared a story about someone doing concreting in your backyard, which was wonderful. And I think for me, the thing I love hearing is, same as you, is like just real life stories.
Yeah.
Because I think that's where scripture and faith comes to life, is in our real life stories and our experience, and sharing those experiences with other people.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's like episode 5 or something. If people want to go back and check that one out if they missed it. Yeah, but I'm really excited to see whatever we do next. There's so many different avenues that I'd love to explore.
Me too, Jonty. I'm pumped.
Yeah.
Hey, it's time to put on our party hats, I reckon.
Yeah.
Don't you reckon?
See if we can get them on over the headphones.
I'm just going to balance. Oh, yeah. That's right. Okay.
Just hold it down.
Yeah. Happy New Year, brother.
Happy New Year.
Oh,
These are so
Jonty.
shit. We should have tested them beforehand.
Oh, that's dumb. That's a stupid. Oh, not even
For
a
people
noise.
that are just listening, we just blew into the shittest party poppers of all time.
Can you put a voiceover over that or some sound over that?
I'll add like really amazing, like, yeah. It'll sound like we're at a party or something.
Woohoo! Happy New Year, Jonty.
Happy New Year. We'll see you all in the new year.
Yeah, Happy New Year, everybody.
Enjoy the end of the year, and thanks for listening for 2022. We've loved your company.
I'm Ness.
And I'm Jonty. This is Filthy Hope. See you next year.
Woo!
Thanks for listening. We're going to be taking a short break from the podcast over January, but we'll be back again in early February with weekly episodes, starting with a conversation that we had with the moderator, Reverend Simon Hansford. If you like this podcast, you can support us by leaving a 5-star review for the show on your chosen podcast platform. This really does help us to cut through to audiences more efficiently and helps us to get the algorithm a little bit more on our side when suggesting our show to new listeners. Honestly though, the best way that you can support this show is just by telling your friends about it. So if there's someone in your life who you think would enjoy listening to the show, take this as your prompt to go and tell them about it. You can find us on socials, or you can get in touch more directly by emailing us at filthyhopepod@gmail.com. Have a restful January, and we'll see you again very soon. Until then though, always remember, take Jesus seriously and don't be a dick.